So when I saw Webster's approach here, I just thought that is brilliance. That is shrinking the whole thing into something you can see. It's manageable.
Hello, and welcome to the Arts of Language podcast with Andrew Pudewa, founder of the Institute for Excellence in Writing, or as many like to say, IEW. My name is Julie Walker, and I'm honored to serve Andrew and IEW as the Director of Marketing. Our goal is to equip teachers and teaching parents with methods and materials which will aid them in training their students to become confident and competent communicators and thinkers. Well, Andrew, this week we're talking about a subject that you enjoy very much and to me is a little bit overwhelming.
No, Unit 6, yes, it's my favorite of all the units.
And I think it's overwhelming for me because I still remember writing a paper when I was 5th or 6th grade, everything you want to know about horses.
Oh, everything.
And that was the thing, is my teacher said you couldn't possibly include everything in this paper, so it's not a good paper. And I was very disappointed. Oh. But I did the whole note cards and researching and reading the encyclopedia, and I worked really hard on that.
So your teacher was critical because you titled it Everything You Would Want to Know About Horses. Mm-hmm. And what you gave her was some interesting stuff about horses.
I thought it was somewhat interesting, yes.
Yeah, but she didn't think the title and the content matched up.
Right. I think the most overwhelming part of it, though, just the whole assignment was just blah. Yeah. And I'm glad I didn't ever have to do it again.
Yes. Well, a lot of people are. They get through that big note card research stack of books and takes weeks and weeks and somehow produce something at the end, but there's a fuzziness. There's a lack of clarity. How did I just do what I did?
Right.
And then, of course, usually you get help if a teacher can help, great. And in my case, I don't know about you, but it was Mom. Mm-hmm. She rescued me. Mm-hmm. I had the great stack of note cards and the great stack of books, and I did exactly what the teacher said. Spread the note cards out, on the floor of the table, and then kind of organize them into groups. And then that'll help you make your outline. Of course, the note cards are going under the piano and out the hall toward the front door. I'm just thinking, what am I going to do with all these note cards? And so when I saw Webster's approach here, I just thought that is brilliance. Mm-hmm. That is shrinking the whole thing into something you can see. It's manageable. You can see the trees and you can see the forest. You can see the details in the process and not get swallowed up by it.
Well, and I know after having taught this unit, I definitely see that the value of it and that it's absolutely doable. You can do a Unit 6 type exercise the way we teach it in just a matter of, hours, really.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just dealing with one topic, one paragraph's worth of information, and you've got materials which are at or below your reading level, you should be able to use multiple sources, create some source outlines, fuse an outline, and write a paragraph in, hour and a half, two at the max.
So I am aware that there might be some listeners who are not familiar with the Unit 6 model. What's it for? What problem are we trying to solve? So why don't you just start right there?
Well, okay. It's called Summarizing Multiple References, and we're building off, of course, Unit 4, which is summarizing a reference.
Right.
So in Unit 4, we teach a few things. One, the topic clincher paragraph model. That topic clincher model is so elegant because it is a way for a student to know, okay, I repeat or reflect 2 or 3 keywords in the first and the last sentence of the paragraph, thereby making it cohesive, thereby tying it together, making it a unit of thought. So we continue that in Unit 5, 6, 7, 8. Then in Unit 4, we talk about summarizing as choosing some facts from too many facts.
Right.
So Unit 4, you have one source of information, with too many facts. So how do you choose? And it's worth mentioning again because it's just so clever.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, maybe I should put on my headstone, invented the word summarize.
Summarize.
Because, you look at summarize, summarize, and what do you think subconsciously? Sum, all, total.
Mm-hmm.
That's math talk, sum.
Right.
Which reminds me of a joke I just saw.
Well, you have to tell it.
Not all math puns are bad. Just some of them.
Nice, nice.
Anyway, so you're choosing some facts, but not all. So properly spelled, the word should be S-O-M-E hyphen A hyphen R-I-Z-E, unless you're in Canada. R-I-Z-E. Or Australia or
any other place that they don't
Zealand,
have confusing letters.
So that is so freeing to the student. So in Unit 4, we're working with that. Too many facts. You choose some, ignore the others, choose what's interesting, important, or relevant. Write those facts into keywords, and then write those keywords into a summary. Now in Unit 6, you've got more than one source. So now you have too many sources with too many facts. So you have that added step. So you have different sources. Most people today, when they think research, will think, you go to the internet and that's where you get information. Maybe you find yourself in a very safe place, like, Britannica or Smithsonian, or maybe you find yourself in a place that's a little too commercial, so the information is skewed. Or you find yourself in a very dangerous place where you can't necessarily believe anything you read, which is why, it's always worth pointing out when we're helping parents and teachers with Unit 6 and research that children today really do need more guidance in learning how to search and understand domain names and make judgment calls about whether this information looks reliable or not. It's not the simple, easy world of our youth.
So clickbait.com/gorillas might not be a good place to find accurate information.
Possibly not. Possibly not. I do kind of mourn the demise of the paper encyclopedia because it was such a useful tool for children to be able to say, okay, my subject is, horses. You remember that one.
I do.
I remember Japan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and I did this great, huge, long country report on Japan in fourth grade or something.
With lots of maps and pictures in it to make it look longer?
Some maps and pictures, yeah. But the encyclopedia is helpful in that you can kind of see all the information there just by flipping a few pages. A website is a mystery. It's a a page within a page. It's it doesn't give you a sense of the scope of the whole very easily or quickly. There may be a lot of useful information and different layers of a web page that you're going to go through, or maybe it's very narrow in its particulars and it's only telling you about one aspect of your subject. The encyclopedia was such a good starting place because it would generally have these little subheadings, and so you could turn to horses and see all the possible things you could talk about horses, all the possible topics, or Japan, or samurais, or whatever you're wanting to research. And so I do think it's nice to have a set of actual book, paper encyclopedias around.
And I think most libraries still have encyclopedias.
Sure.
And they may not be absolutely current. So if you're studying, quantum computers or something,
right.
you might not be able to find an article on that.
Yeah, but if you're studying the Peloponnesian War, there's not a whole lot new that's been discovered in the last 20 years about that. So, in any case, but then there's online encyclopedias that are almost as good. One of the things we talk about in the TWSS is the different types of sources and some of the advantages and disadvantages. But really, it's from websites to books to encyclopedias, including videos, History Channel off YouTube, or even journal articles. A lot of what used to be in the, I know you're going to laugh when I say this, Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature. I wonder how many of our listeners are old enough to know what that is. But yes, in middle school, we trooped down to the library en masse, and they taught us how to use the microfilm and
Microfiche,
find what we needed. And in the Reader's Guide to, we would use the Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature, find the name of the article, and then have to go look on the microfiche to find the article. That was, I must confess, pretty darn tedious. But the equivalent of that today is, of course, the online databases.
Right.
JSTOR, LexisNexis, a lot of kids who are in schools, particularly high school, will have access to an online database, which contains all of the, scholarly work that is available in that database. Kids who are part of homeschool speech and debate usually access information through, I think, the LexisNexis. And if you're not part of a school or a group that provides that, you can usually get it through your library membership. And that's where you get some of the, more primary types of sources, the people who actually did the research and wrote the article, rather than the New York Times reporter summarizing that research or article, or then the so-and-so who summarized the New York Times article, and then the blogger who summarized the summary of the summary of so.
Right.
So I would just kind of wrap that up by underscoring the importance of consciously working with kids today to help them learn online research skills and to encourage them, if possible, go to a library, learn how to find a real book, and use that.
I believe that February is National Library Month. So we've now given 2 or 3 plugs to go to the library. So moms, teachers, this is the month to do that.
This would be the month. And it's usually bad weather in a lot of places. So, you can't play outside. Why not?
Go to the library.
Go learn how to do research in the library.
Yes.
So sources of information, you have multiple sources. Could be 2, 3, 4, more. I know that there's a competition. I had some students participate one year in the National History Day, nhd.org, I believe it is. And they like to have in their projects minimum of 12 and usually up into getting close to 20 different sources of information that they would cite in their
But new teachers, new to our system, or younger students, just starting with a couple is okay, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Webster said he used to just use 2 different encyclopedias. And once they could do that, he would then use 3 different encyclopedias. Then he'd use 2 encyclopedias and a book. And so, even with advanced students who are learning the process, materials that are well organized are the best. And of course, when we teach this in the TWSS, we use the
mini books,
infamous elephant mini books.
Elephant mini books,
which are contrived to have overlapping topical information. So there's 5 of them, and we go through and list the 5 topics in each of the 5 books. We see there's 25 mini chapters, paragraphs, and some topics have 2, some have 3, some have 4, some have 5, and just go through that process. And it's amazing how many adults I have met, who've been through graduate school.
Right.
And they come to the course, they do the Unit 6 practicum, and almost everybody says, if only I had known this when I was in school. So the application is across grade level. It can work in grade 3 with your little cute report, and it can work all the way up into, a research process at a advanced or professional level.
Right. Now, there's a limit to how many paragraphs this would be.
Well, technically, Unit 6 assignments, as we include them in, say, our theme-based writing lessons or our video classes or whatnot, 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs.
And so why stop at 3?
Well, you could do more. You could do more. But we look at Unit 6 not as this is a product. This is a research report that we're going to hang on the wall and say, oh, isn't this wonderful, a product. This is actually one of those units that teaches a skill that we will apply in a later unit, which would look more like a finished product. And that is, of course,
the Unit 8.
The Unit 8.
Which we'll get to in a couple months.
So with the formal essays, we're working with 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 38 paragraphs, whatever you want. And the idea is to understand that when you have a subject, like horses, like Japan, you would list possible topics. That would be the second step. And then when you see all the possible topics, you then would say, well, how many do I need? How many do I need? If my goal is to write one paragraph, then I just choose one topic. Boom. If I need 2, I would choose 2. If I need 3, I would choose 3. Once you have 3 topics, you're kind of at a point where it almost begs for some framework, some introductory and concluding material, some embedded repetition. And so that's when we would say, beyond 3, you really want to look at a Unit 8 model as a finished product.
Right.
One of the things, though, that I try to suggest is when you're choosing your, 2 or 3 topics for Unit 6, and even when you're choosing 3 or more topics for Unit 8, you would want to choose topics that kind of fit well together.
Okay.
Right? So if you're writing about, California, then try to choose topics that might fit. So you might have beautiful beaches and stunning mountains and picturesque deserts.
Exactly.
Those would fit together nicely. Whereas if you wanted to write about the traffic and pollution in Los Angeles, you could also write about other unpleasant things you might experience in California. But don't try to write about the history of California in one paragraph, the government of California in another one, and the beaches. Those are too disparate.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an idea in Unit 6. The other thing I kind of point out in Unit 6 to people who are listening or watching the TWSS is for kids, more frequent, shorter assignments tend to be better.
Right.
What do children enjoy the most about schoolwork?
Being done.
Being finished, yes. That's what everybody likes about work,
yes,
right?
Right.
Being finished. So if you do more frequent, shorter assignments,
You're done
get
more
to
often.
be finished more frequently, so you're happier.
Yep.
You get the joy of being done. Also, it's better for teachers because you have a smaller loop. So if you've got kids who spend 2 or 3 weeks on a great huge project,
Right.
it's hard to figure out, okay, what do they need to learn, who understood what needs to be retaught, how do we refine this thing? Because you're just all exhausted from doing this big, huge thing.
Yes, I think of when I wrote my paper on horses, and it was probably 5 or 6 pages with lots of pictures and maps and all that. And I thought, how overwhelming this is. But now that you're talking about that, I think about my poor teacher, Mrs. Jensen, who had to read all those papers.
Yes.
That would be overwhelming as well. So I would suppose that short, frequent assignments would be good for the teacher as well.
Better for the teachers. Doesn't take so long and feel like such a burden to deal with the whole pile of them. Plus, if you say, here, let's do a paragraph, and then you determine that some of the students maybe didn't quite understand fully, well, you can reteach right there and do another one just like that. And then you can determine, okay, there's some more refinement. You can discuss that, represent, talk to kids individually, be sure they got it. Do one more kind of just like that. And that's going to be a better process and a better end result than doing all 3 at once.
Right.
And saying, now you didn't understand and you kind of messed it up, all 3 of these things. You see what I mean?
Right. And then I know that you talk about this also in the TWSS. You can actually repurpose that Unit 6 assignment, save it for later.
Yeah. Well, that's what we actually do in the practicums, just to have mercy on all those people who want to do the instructor certification program. Because to become a registered instructor with IEW, you have to do the practicum exercise for all 9 units.
Yes, you do. And it's so worth it.
It is so worth it. In fact, I don't think I have ever met one teacher who went through that whole process and submitted it with the fee who didn't say, I'm proud of that.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did that. I learned by doing that. I'm a better teacher because of it. So anyone who's kind of on the fence about that, they've watched the videos or came to a workshop and, you've got half of it done. Well, just keep going. I mean, take it to completion. But one of the things we do in that is we say, in Unit 2, you wrote a paragraph about elephants and infrasound. And in Unit 4, you wrote a paragraph about the species of elephants. And in Unit 6, you wrote a paragraph from multiple references, the elephant mini books, on either something like habitat, behavior, domestication, infrasound, right? You now have 3 paragraphs on elephants. Use those for your Unit 8. You don't have to write a whole new essay. You don't have to think up something from scratch. Just go ahead and add a conclusion introduction, and there you go. That is really helpful in the classroom because if you say, to the students, okay, your first Unit 8 is 5 paragraphs and you have to write all 5, in however many days or weeks you have. And this is especially true with younger students. That's a little harder. Whereas if you say, look, you've got 3 paragraphs about something you already wrote. Let's now focus on what it would look like to add the conclusion structure and the introduction material. And now you've got your first 5-paragraph completed one. That gives a better understanding. So, I do love Unit 6. And I think what you see is that if students, when they're young, get a chance to practice this process, they really kind of internalize it more. The 2 things they take into their years as they get older, as become older students, and the skill that lasts into university or work, is this idea of filter, fuse, organize, present. Filter, fuse, organize, present. It's a process. It's a thinking habit, if you will, that fights against the problem of being overwhelmed with too much information.
And even as you mentioned that filter, fuse, organize, present, those are probably other writing programs may talk about those things, but we actually teach how to do each one of those step by step.
Yeah, in a very clear, easy to see, mechanical way. And I have this little group of kids I'm teaching right now, and they're all like grade 3 to 5, I think. And we just finished Unit 6 because we're coming to the spring, so we're going to move into Unit 7. But it was just so exciting for me to see how these kids got this process by us doing it together a few times with contrived source texts that I provided to them. And then when I said, okay, go get your own materials and do the same thing, they understood what to do.
And your assignment that you gave them was on a country.
It was.
Yep. And so did that bring memories back a little bit?
Yeah, and a couple of them wrote about Japan.
Yes, they did. Cute.
Yeah, the whole idea of we learn a process in a, I don't know, what would you say, almost a mechanical way that some people criticize as being too formulaic or too rigid. But that creates a thinking that then the creativity and the flexibility can build on that structure. It's like a skeleton. If you don't have a skeleton, you're not going to have much of a body.
Well, and I like to think of it as fences on a playground. And my undergraduate degree is in recreation.
Yes, it is.
And that was the big debate that we had back in the 80s. Should we remove fences from playgrounds? And what they found is playgrounds that had fences around them, the children played more freely because they knew where their boundaries were.
Interesting.
So there you go. We're providing the structure now so they can have the freedom to play within that structure. Yeah.
Well, we've certainly seen that firsthand. And then, of course, I've met countless. I mean, I really can't count. Honestly, I'm sure I could have. I mean, it's not an infinite number. But there's so many, it would have been very hard to count the grown-up kids, the IEW graduates who are
where
now,
are they now kids.
Yeah, they're now in their 20s or older, and they are in school, in graduate school, working, having become, professionals, lawyers, researchers, teachers in their own right, homeschool parents, and they will reflect back. And very often, they'll say, yes, when I got to school and had to do this, it was just natural. I knew what to do. I didn't have to figure it out. Whereas a lot of my peers, my roommate and his girlfriend, I had to teach them how to do this.
Right.
And so it's just one of those things like riding a bike or swimming. If you learn it and practice it when you're young, you have it for life.
Right.
If you don't, then you can get overwhelmed and confused by the nature of too much information these days.
So spending about, 20 to 30, maybe up to an hour each day of this process, how long would it take you to do 3 paragraphs?
Well, depending on the age of the child, the reading level of the materials, the familiarity of the subject matter, the amount of practice they've had so far. But if you think, 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes max to choose 5 facts from one source, 5 facts from a second source, 5 facts from a third source. So you're looking somewhere in the range of 30 to 45 minutes.
Okay. Keyword outlines
Keyword
done.
outlines, and then you fuse it together.
Okay, source keyword outlines done, then you fuse.
Fuse, how long can that take? You've got, 9 to 15, maybe 20 facts you want to choose now, a certain number, 5, 6, 7, whatever, and organize those. So, if you're thinking carefully, maybe another 10, 15 minutes, write 1 paragraph, 7, 8, 9, 10 sentences with a dress-up checklist or maybe some sentence openers, easy +1 style checklist.
Right.
Half an hour.
Yeah.
Get someone to edit that for you, recopy it over, another 15, 20 minutes. 2 hours max.
So that same report that I did on horses that you did on Japan, maybe a shorter version of that, 2 hours.
Well, per
week.
Per topic.
Per topic, right. Yeah.
And so, if you did 2 or 3 in a week.
Yeah.
But what I would guess is if you look at our kids, if you look at the students I'm teaching, it might have taken them 2 hours, the first paragraph, first topic.
Right.
But after the 3rd or 4th assignment, they are whipping through this thing in half that time.
Right.
Because they know much better what they're – and, of course, there's a variation. Some kids, especially young ones, they just put letters on paper faster, and some are still a little bit slower on that.
Yep.
But it's a reasonable project. And, of course, always reminding parents and teachers, don't have the over-expectation that the student is going to become independent according to your hope or your belief. Or worse, assume that because you explained what to do, they should be able to just go do it.
Yes.
Very often, the trick in teaching this is to do it together.
Yes.
And, hey, let's all get the same source. Let's all do it on the whiteboard. You copy what I'm doing. And take it to the point where, you're sure everything has been done so they can have success and write it up. And then the next assignment, say, okay, here, you choose, we'll do the source outlines together. Now you get to fuse it yourself and write it out. Okay, you got the hang of it. Now try this on your own. Okay, you got the hang of it. Now here's your subject. Go.
Right.
But we need that runway. We need that modeling. And then the kids have the confidence, and they're so much happier in the end.
Well, I love how the system takes something that was so complicated and now makes it so accessible to all kids everywhere. Everybody is now happier because no more note cards, just clear understanding of how to do a research paper. Thank you.
It is always good to talk about my favorite unit.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more, you can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, or just visit us each week at iew.com/podcasts. Until then, on behalf of Andrew Pudewa and the team at IEW, I thank you for the privilege of allowing us to partner with you on your journey toward better listening, speaking, reading, writing, and thinking.